Good morning, viewers. Mike here. Boy, I'm pretty pumped up today. Last week we hit 100 subscribers. Unbelievable. I'm really humbled. Thank you very much. I hope you get half as much enjoyment out of watching these as that I do in making them. So today, first of all, let's start out by showing you something that I've been doing here the last day or two. And then later we'll take a look at a quick tips and tricks thing with a center drill. So let's go. Last week I was given this sign base, and the base was good, but the post was all rusted, so I cut that off and I welded this pipe onto it. And I made up this little welding positioner for those times when you're going to do a weld job out of position, like overhead or vertical. And so you can do a couple of practice runs before you actually get onto your actual workpiece, because let's face it, you only have one shot at that, and you know, pride tells you you want to do as good a job as you can. So I have seen these on YouTube. I think on Jody Collins, or Collier Collins, I think it is, channel, Welding Tips and Tricks. He had one that was made by Skag USA. So I kind of eyeballed that and copied a little bit to suit my needs. And first of all, it's got this little tray on it, and you can use that to hold your tools while you're doing your test welds, or you can use it for to prop your arm or elbow while you're welding. And it's positional. You know, it's you can see the positioning clamp handle in the back, and it rotates about the post, and you can elevate it up and down. And then second of all, this is kind of the working end of this thing. It's got this little clamp here, and you can clamp your workpiece in, and then you have a 45 too, so you can clamp a piece in a 45-degree position as well. And then of course it rotates about the post and elevates on this back adjusting screw or stop screw. And so let me show you how this works. So here's a piece of 1/2-inch angle iron clamped in, and you know, you could run a bead right up here to do a couple practice runs. You could do a root fill and a cap on that, or you could come around on the flat side and run a bead or two up here, or you could turn this and run a bead in the flat position as well. So if you're like me, floor space in your shop is at a premium. So for this thing to be able to live here, it's going to have to do at least double duty, because you know, using it for welding is not going to be that frequent. So I decided that this thing can also act as a camera mount. So the old camera mount mounted on this tripod, which has this little post on it, and this went on here like this, and there was a little lock screw that went on here to ensure that it never fell off, and then it rotated about that post, and you lock it using this thumb screw, and that sets it right up. Unlock it and you can rotate it. So what I did was I borrowed this top bracket from this tripod, and I made this little post up on the lathe out of a piece of cold rolled steel that I had, and I put a tapped hole in the bottom of it and bolted it onto this piece of aluminum angle iron, and voila, we have a little utility camera mount. And then that mounts into my welding holder, and there you go. So we can put this up pretty much any position we want. If I can do this one-handed, which I don't think I can. And there you have it. Now, I've been thinking about what might make some interesting videos for the future, and I was, one of the things that popped up was possibly maybe some tips and tricks. And I realize I've watched videos, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of videos out there with tips and tricks, but a lot of them are kind of repackaged. They're the same old tips and tricks, and they're just presented in a little bit different manner. There are many good ones, very good ones, but a lot of them have just been used over and over. So what I've been trying to think of is some things that I might have kicking around in my memory banks that might be of value to some of you out there. And I'm sure that there's those of you out there that have seen all of this stuff and it's old hat. But maybe there's a hobbyist or someone new to the machine field that might find some of these valuable. So I have one here today that I'd like to share with you. And if you think this sort of thing is valuable, leave a comment and I can come up with more of this sort of thing. So with that said, let me show you what I got. Today we're talking center drills. How many times have you come up with a situation where you needed to center drill a hole and the hole was positioned such that you could not get in there to get your depth because the chuck was hitting something that was too close? And let me tell you, if you haven't come up with a situation, someday you will if you're actively involved in machining. So they do make long center drills. At least I think they make like center drills at least 4 inches long and maybe longer. So here you are with a job and you only have standard length center drills, but you need to have a center drill that allows you to bypass whatever obstacle is in your way. So the solution would be to buy a longer one. Well, I don't know. I mean, you know, your cheap Chinese center drills you can probably get for $4 or $5 a piece, and maybe a good center drill might be $6 a piece. And if you get a long one, like in the 4-inch range, that could be like double, maybe double or triple the cost of a standard length center drill. Plus, you've got the factor of waiting, you know, up to a week, you know, 3 days to a week for this thing to arrive. Unless you have a center drill store nearby that you can just go down and buy one that afternoon. So anyway, I've encountered this in my career, and what I used to do is I would just take a standard center drill and I would make a little holder up and put a small set screw in there, and there you go, away you go. Well, the problem is, you know, the center drill runs pretty well, but you know, you do have a little bit of work to do to drill the hole up the shank of whatever material you're using, and then drill a cross hole and tap it. And you have to grind a little flat on your center drill to make sure it doesn't spin. And that's one solution, but it's a little bit of work. But I have come up with a better solution, something that's worked for me. And this is an example right here. I had this, ran across this in my toolbox the other day. This is a, let's see, a number 2 center drill. And just a piece of drill rod. And what it has is just a slip fit hole up here, or slight press fit hole. And inside this main hole is a smaller hole which clears, it provides clearance for the initial cutting lip of the center drill. And this is just pushed in there, and the whole principle here is that it can't spin because the more you drill, the force applied, the torque force applied on the tip spins it, it tries to cut into the back side of this, and it just jams in there and it works super. Now, I've never tried it, but I suppose if this was dull, you could probably put that in a vise, pull that out, turn it around, and use the other end as well. But that's really kind of a slick and easy solution. Let me explain a little bit further what I'm talking about here. Okay, now I hope you can see this, otherwise I'll have to video it over. I won't know until I review the tape. But first of all, you have a shank, and this, what I used was drill rod, but it can be anything that's some kind of stock that's round. This would be the top side. So here's your, what I would call the shank. You drill a hole up the center on a lathe. And this would be a slip fit or a slight push fit for the center drill. Up the center of that is a smaller hole which clears the initial lead edge of the center drill, the drill part of it, because you don't want any force on this tip. You just want that to be clearance around there. So then you just push your center drill. This is a center drill. You just push that, press fit that right up this hole, and the first time you use it, this will try to spin, and when it does, the cutting lip of the center drill will cut into this little ledge down here, and it'll bind that drill right in there. And we will do a little experiment, and I'll show you how I do that.